We will continue with a panel on development and integration in Latin America with the following guests. As moderator, the General Secretary of the Latin American Association of Development Financial Institutions, Edgardo Alvarez, and our debaters are Jorge Arbache, Vice President of the Latin American Development Bank, CAF, Dante Mossi, President of the Central American Economic Integration Bank, Juan Notaro, President of Fonplata, and Juan Cuattromo, President of the Bank of the Province of Buenos Aires. So with the floor, the moderator, Edgardo Alvarez. I'd like to thank the Brazilian Development Association and for the honor of inviting and the honor and invitation to moderate this panel. We aimed at discussing the global economy and greater integration between countries in Latin America to address our development issues. It's a topic that draws our attention because we are an institution with a vision in common, confirmed by 86 countries in Latin America and Caribbean, and of course the regional financial organizations that have found a space for cooperation and integration. We recognize that these are difficult times, but also times of opportunity to deepen our ties and strengthen intra-regional development, especially in critical fields such as health. On this occasion, as already mentioned by Adalgisa, our panel members are great friends and representatives of important financial organizations and regional banks. So we have Jorge Arbache, Vice President of CAF, Dante Mossi, President of the BCIE, Juan Cuattromo, President of BAPRO, and Juan Notaro, President of Fonplata. So we have covered the region, and I'd like to give the floor immediately to the first speaker, Cuattromo, President of the Bank of the Province of Buenos Aires. Juan? Hello, can you hear me? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here in Buenos Aires. It's a clear morning, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this panel. Eduardo and all the others, Edgardo and all others, thank you. I have a brief presentation to share with you, and I'd like to explain how we have been addressing management issues, and this was mentioned in previous presentations, but the Bank of the Province of Buenos Aires is a public bank, and I have been leading the bank since 2019 with a range of strategic goals agreed with the governor of the province. And then the pandemic hit. So what is important for us is to highlight that even in difficult times, when it was necessary to create different mechanisms to adapt to difficult times, we did not change our goals and strategic challenges. So, as I was saying, we began our management with a political decision to resume the role of inducer of economic and productive promotion and development in the region, which is an essential role that had been lost in previous years. And it was necessary to highlight assistance and support to productive sectors. Another challenge is financial inclusion, providing tools that will allow incorporating and expanding the reach of the system, the scope of the financial system. So through a very aggressive strategy of investment in technology, I will tell you about two successful cases last year. As I said, the challenges we had became doubly challenging in the framework of the pandemic. A brief note, a brief comment to provide some context. I don't know if you are all aware of the reality of the province of Buenos Aires. The province contributes with 40% of the GDP of the Argentine Republic. It is a center of production and with many small and micro companies. We identified more than 172 micro and small companies generating. Well, we understand that the assistance of the bank to these productive sectors plays a fundamental role in the creation of jobs. And so along 2020, so the political decision to place the bank at the service of productive sectors, as we can see last year, the balance of loans in the commercial sector grew 104%. And so in terms of growth, the total growth of the system, we have a growth of 80%, and in Argentina, inflation was 36%. But in real figures, assistance to productive activity was quite strong. And the key point in this response is a range of tools that were created by the national government and provincial government in order to offer assistance through different lines and different methods, outreach methods, with the deepening of the system of guarantees for micro and small companies, which is so important in times such as this. And we also implemented credits at zero rates for freelance professionals and workers who were highly impacted by the crisis. So a range of tools developed by the government and by the bank, offering space for banks to support these financial activities and protect jobs. So the bank, the provincial bank, was a leader with expansion of credit and emphasizing small and medium companies. So we made a great effort, especially in agricultural and cattle raising and stock raising sectors, through financial lines for workers and providing assistance to a large number of companies in the province of Buenos Aires. As I mentioned previously, the key point necessary in the framework of restrictions imposed by the pandemic, as observed in the whole region and all around the world, with a limitation in the opening of businesses, with protocols, strict protocols for opening, and So this entailed many limitations, and in this context, in mid-2020, the bank launched an operation called e-check, a new means of payment, allowing companies to cash checks at the provincial bank. So we were the first, and this is a key point in Argentina. These operations entail transfer to the branches, and through investments. This is not the same as going physically to the branch and having a certain time. It's not the same as a digital operation, but of course this entailed respect for health protocols. And
in this complicated time, such as 2020, in this complicated moment. And the second successful case is that was called DNI account, which is a digital portfolio through mobile phones, validating ID cards, so we can, being clients of the bank, to be linked to the bank or create an account. And this is total financial inclusion process. As you can see in these numbers, this portfolio launched in April 2020, and it grew quite fastly. We have over 3 million users in the country, and in Buenos Aires, we have also strong growth in use. What we offer our clients is being able to use several services, mobile phone recharges, and all financial accounts or financial services, and it allows to incorporate over 3 million users in the financial system. After the pandemics, we had the Kife, an experience that was repeated in several countries, which we call emergency family revenue. These had to be paid very fast, and with the sanitary protocols in Buenos Aires, this happened. So we paid over large amounts without people needing to go to bank agencies, so that they could be financially included. In order to conclude, and being swift, in my presentation, what I would like to say is that in a year full of challenges that we had, with the vision of public bank emphasizing small companies, but also with the whole inclusion of the population of the Buenos Aires province. And even with the pandemic's challenges, we were able to do and to proceed with our goals. We are also able to provide several activities that are key for small companies, generating business rounds for international inclusion. And we have a platform called Vincular with several business rounds for partners to work and promote regional trade, showing our small companies in different areas of in Brazil and Uruguay, etc. And as a public bank, we offer capacity building to facilitate SMEs to carry out these international trade rounds. So we are a development bank with a technological presence and innovation in the productive sector. Thank you very much. And it is quite a lot that you have been able to do in this difficult year we are going through. So let's go to the Q&A session. We now would like to give the floor to Mr. Jorge Arbache, Vice President of Latin America Development Bank, the CAF. You have the floor. Well, first of all, it is a pleasure being here with you in this brilliant panel. Thank you all for the invitation. I will answer 3 questions that were sent to me so that I can organize my ideas. The first question was about measures implemented by CAF regarding value chain, infrastructure, and trade in the regional perspective. One of CAF's pillars is regional integration. We seek to support physical and non-physical infrastructure. We have several recent examples, such as bridges between Brazil and Paraguay, Brazil and Uruguay, an important network of transmission to Central America, also internet network in Central America, and submarine cables as well. And also we have capital markets in integration. This is also very important, especially for the private sector. We understand that supporting regional value chains involve long chain promotion, promoting interconnectivity and businesses, especially in urban areas where the most part of the population is in our region. It is good to remember that Latin America is a very urban region in the world, and this should be a critical factor in decision-making processes, especially when our banks evaluate projects. Ports, airports, roads, energy generation, internet, they are factors that enable the integration of value chains. We also have promotion of SMEs, because SMEs are important parts of value chains that are solid and that can actually be part of the solution for job generation and sustainable economic growth. Second question, in terms of cooperation, how does CAF participate with institutions in other countries to foment cooperation and regional development? I'd say that CAF works with other institutions financing development, and also indirect institutions, including several national and subnational development banks at the regional level, at the national level in Brazil, and so many other banks and institutions in the country. But we also work in partnerships with private banks, investment banks, fintechs. And we believe these are efficient paths to promote the private sector and also to promote value chains in the region. The third question is about the changes that we observe and that are affecting the topic of value chains, especially in the with a post-pandemic glance. Well, we see a regionalization of value chains throughout the world, not only here in our hemisphere. And this has been facilitated by the popularization of technologies, political issues such as protectionism, and we have security in supply of inputs. We also see environmental topics and so many others, bringing to our region opportunities and challenges. Opportunities because this regionalization will be a drive for our region to improve topics that are in the interest of regional areas, because cheap labor is no longer important for investment geographies. In trade agreements and preferences, such as we have seen in the RCEP in Asia, this could bring important factors or important impact to our regions too. So we want to explore the opportunities and to see in this process of changing value chains from global to regional, a unique opportunity for the region to identify the spaces and work with partners that are ideal and adequate in order to make this maybe an important opportunity to promote integration and economic development in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. It's true. What CAFI is doing is very important towards the integration of our region. And so now we will give the floor to my friend Dante. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you, sharing this session and conveying a message of solidarity of the Central American Economic Integration Bank. We are all working, I hope you are all working safely, and my intervention I'll start by saying that on the 12th of March, 2020, a meeting was held to discuss, a presidential meeting was held to discuss the COVID crisis. At the time, I innocently thought that the tragedy was actually being inflated, but it was a good opportunity to work with all the presidents and to agree on a work plan to address what we felt was going to be life-changing. And so we approved a first assistance package for our countries, which included the purchase from Korea of COVID tests for all our member countries, also financing to help private sector companies, especially small companies, to help them survive during the months of lockdown during the pandemic. So we also supported the public sector in extraordinary actions and to compensate for losses of revenue losses. And so also in Central America, in addition to COVID, we also were hit by 2 hurricanes as a consequence of climate change. And so one hurricane hit, and 2 weeks later, another hurricane. And so in this crisis, it's important to mention that the damages were not affected many islands as well. And so this means that working as an economic integration bank, we provided a $1 billion program. We actually need $15 billion in the next few years to transform the industries in Central America. We've been talking to the president of so they can understand that presidents are worried about debts from external loans, and so all countries will be more open to the private sector. And so the BCIE is ready to provide support through this financing. One of the secrets that development banks know very well is that we rely on a fund for preparation of first-level projects. We've already had support from friendly countries in Central America, and I'd also like to say that Taiwan, Korea, European Union, US also answered our call, contributing with resources to these project preparation funds. They promptly signed agreements for mitigation of climate changes and projects in this area. So how do we prepare governments not only to make investments, necessary investments, but also how can this be done in a context of high indebtedness? The BCIE has been sharing ideas and concepts between countries, among countries, and I'd like to mention the Monte Grande company in the Dominican Republic. It's working on in a very dry area and building dams for management of water resources and supply of water for irrigation during the dry season. And so the best technology is used to solve the problems. And we are also working to activate railway lines in Central America. We haven't seen trains in Central America in the past 150 years, and so we need partners to support us in this industrial development because we are investing in railways that have been completely destroyed by heavy loads, and luckily trade has been an important driver in this aspect. And so this in March, the 8 presidents that attended the meeting highlighted 2 elements. One, closing borders. The second element, and they asked the bank to cooperate, was that in addition to interrupting flights and also, but they requested the maintenance of cargo transportation. And so Central America decided at the time, or actually one day before the meeting, it was decided that trade should not be interrupted. And that's an important element for the Central American region because our second partner remained active and proactive during the pandemic. Today, well, now we have started working also with a vaccination package. We've been talking with the pharmaceutical companies that didn't want to deal with development bank, but rather with countries. But we made our proposal of $58 million in financing, financed by thematic bonds, as we call them, from the Asian market, and the rate lower than 2% for 20 years of grace. And so that gave an opportunity to each country in Central America. And in the Dominican Republic, they were able to purchase vaccines without being restricted in terms of funds for vaccine purchase. And so they were able to purchase vaccines for their population. So what are we thinking of in terms of the future? We will have a meeting of presidents in June this year. And the agenda, the previous agenda continues. It's what we call industrial revolution in Central America, with the introduction of trains and connectivity of Central America with the Caribbean, emphasis on renewable energy, electricity, etc. And so these are not new issues, but they are new in terms of Central America, for Central America. And we want to address this with resources. And we would like to invite investors to come and invest in Central America. We are learning a lot from our international partners. We'd like to thank Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, which have been innovating a lot in this crisis and have been sharing lessons with our bank. And we are very pleased that many issues of Central America were actually shared, or actually we learned from Argentina and its health system. And so in Nicaragua, for instance, we have examples of projects to tackle COVID-19 in penitentiaries. And so I am very proud to say that part of the region, we aim to integrate countries as well as integrate with Taiwan, Spain, Korea, with completely different time zones, almost 12 years difference, but they are still partners of the BCIE, contributing with valuable capital and knowledge of how to manage and not to manage. And this is very useful for each of our member countries. So I'd like to thank this forum. I love to hear the ideas and innovations. And the bank was able to capitalize itself during the crisis.
El reto ahora es cómo expandemos el mercado centroamericano.
And the challenge now is how to expand Central American markets in Mercosur, using a strategic partner such as Argentina to integrate us even further. Once again, I'd like to thank for the opportunity. Thank you, Brazil. It is a country I very much appreciate. And have a good morning and be safe. Thank you. It is amazing what you have done, and we are going to comment the major accomplishments that are going through thanks to the integration in the region, in the whole of Latin America. So I give the floor to Dr. Notaro, Executive Director of Fonplata. Mr. Juan Notaro, please. I'm sorry, my microphone was mute. It's all fine now. Thank you all for the invitation. Thanks for this great panel. It's great to share this panel with you, and it is also great to hear what you have presented. I'd like to salute the Brazilian initiative and the invitation by my colleague Sergio Guzmão. and or thank for the organization of this forum. ABDE has always had relevant roles in the development of countries in Latin America, and this has even grown in the last years. It is a very positive moment for us to meet here at ABDE's event, a very important event for us to strengthen strategic alliances and to exchange experiences, especially in this scenario of pandemics that we are going through. And especially now during the pandemics, and that is going much longer than we expected and anticipated. So, as regards Fonplata, as you know, the strategic niche of our bank is projects between 100 and 300 million reais, prioritizing border areas affecting more than one country, and also small and medium-sized cities, looking at the stabilization of regional economies inside the global economy. Loan portfolios have grown in the last years, and especially because after 2012, we have had unique experience in specific topics such as border and small and medium-sized cities. From the very beginning of the pandemics, we have observed unprecedented decline in the levels of production and employment in our member countries. Many of them already facing difficulties before the pandemics to maintain employment levels. And the progress of the recent years, all these have worsened, and the support of countries such as ours is essential for economic recovery. In this sense, to that effect, both for urgencies and those related to the pandemics, institutions such as ours play an important role in several areas. We continue our support related to regional integration, infrastructure, sustainability, and also production. And we emphasize and prioritize a lot, reinforcing actions that allow sectors and groups that are more vulnerable, especially small and medium companies, rural companies, activities that promote employment, women, those that were the most affected in terms of jobs in the recent months. We have made progress with some projects using mechanisms promoting women's jobs and employment in Argentina especially, and we had public works projects in 20 municipalities promoting participation of small companies and with gender promotion, gender equality promotion. In Bolivia, we have a third program called Urban Infrastructure and Job Generation, and the teams participating in upgrades and construction and maintenance of roads and squares, etc. All these projects should include at least 50% women among staff.
Y bueno, para referirnos a Brasil, en Brasil tenemos proyectos que...
Well, as regards Brazil, we have projects that align several sectors of urban intervention, especially with small and medium-sized cities in Brazil. And these interventions are aimed at improving quality of life of populations in transportation, green areas, cycling paths, and also job generation and opportunities for more vulnerable populations. In some cities that are highlighted are cities such as Itajaí, Sorocaba, in São Paulo, São Gonçalo in Rio Grande do Norte, Vila Velha in Espírito Santo. As you can observe, we work across the country in Brazil. In addition, Fonplata has a new financing line without the need, beg your pardon, aimed at credit for small and medium-sized companies or investment projects in municipalities. The criteria are very agile and costs that are reduced. In Brazil, we identify and negotiating several operations with different financial operations, and one icon finance aimed at municipalities was the one in 2020 given to the Minas Gerais Bank, BMG. This work, together with the National Bank for Development, is very important to us, taking into account that these banks have major knowledge of these cities and the populations, and they are excellent partners to bring efficacy and effectiveness to the projects, as well as sharing and implementing best practices for sustainable development, which is a concern that we have in our bank. For Fonplata, this implementation of partnerships is extremely important, as well as increasing participation ever more. So we understand that ABDE can be a major strategic partner for us to work with. The emergency of the moment, the harsh reality we face, urges us to dialogue and join efforts. I hope that in this forum we can have more opportunities to continue creating the future with our partnerships. Thank you. Thank you, Dante. Very interesting, your comments regarding everything that is being done. The last presidential meeting that I had was last year, in March, last year.
A meeting in Montevideo organized by Fonplata. It was the last face-to-face meeting that I had, and I hope that soon we will be able to hold face-to-face meetings again, which are so important to deepen our ties. I'd like to make some comments on what was shared by the panel members. First, Juan Juan brought some important key data reflecting the contra-cyclic role of the bank. And Juan, this was possible through the Fonplata program, with an increase of the portfolio allocated to the productive sector. And this was done in support of small companies and small and medium companies, with support of the Argentine government and allowing for support to the productive sector. And so in this context, financial entities that did not adapt technologically suffered a lot. And we see that this has been overcome successfully by BAPRO. And there was the implementation of what was called the digital portfolios, with more than 3 million users and 36 million transactions. So it's quite significant, as well as the e-check, which facilitates and allows people to do their transactions electronically on their computers or devices. And so this helps a lot. And this decreases the burden for banks and facilitates access to the e-checks. And so this is very important. A key aspect that I wanted to mention from Jorge's presentation from CAFE, one of the pillars is infrastructure, and regional integration is done through infrastructure, and thus support is given to interconnectivity to facilitate businesses, because without connectivity, what business can be done? Also mentioned coordination with other regional and national financial institutions, as well as extra-national institutions, contributing to mobilize and attract resources to the region. He also mentioned changes that affect value chains, a product of the crisis. We saw many complaints regarding delays in supply to countries, especially of products from Asia, and also deadlines, some complaints regarding deadlines, and so, or time frames. And so national production is prioritized as a result, as well as regional production. This is a big opportunity for our region, bringing about opportunities and challenges for financial markets and also the health sector. Regarding Dante's presentation, I'm very pleased to see the integration, how integration is being conducted in Central America, with a coordination, with a sharing of experiences, because in our region, it's important to conduct actions, and entities from other countries should be able to draw on these experiences, as in the example of the penitentiaries. We all need to contribute, and we all have a lot to learn and a lot to do. And so help offered to governments for the financing of materials and allowing for the purchase of vaccines, that's something that on a different occasion would have been very difficult to achieve. He also mentioned the double crisis and also the hurricanes. Our region is hit by all these natural disasters. But the most important thing is the people. The population is our main asset. We are very resilient societies. We have resilient societies. Likewise, there's a concern over social expenditures and also the issue of how to look at these solutions and pursue solutions through promotion of private investments for the financing of projects. Also mentioned wonderful projects that I hope will be materialized, such as electric trains, for instance. Taking goods, transporting goods. Well, borders were closed, but transit was not closed. And the main commercial partner of Central America are Central Americans. And so this is something that in Latin America, in the South, we need to learn by looking at how this was addressed in Central America. Regarding comments by Juan focused on the development bank and focus on small and medium-sized border cities, which is important for the integration of economies globally. They are supporting economic recovery in such a way that countries can sustain national economies and companies and families without losing advances achieved in reduction of poverty and promotion of jobs. So it's fair that the most needy affected by the crisis should be contemplated. It's only fair. And so Fonplata is promoting urban infrastructure, promoting jobs, especially among women. So there is an important focus on women and also a focus on job generation and support to municipal governments. And so we see that integration includes not only
debe ser a todas las personas, no solo a personas, sino a municipios.
Not only including all people, but the municipalities, the territories, and very often municipalities and local governments don't rely on financial support. They depend only on their own resources, and that's why it's important for institutions to help promote financial integration of municipalities and local governments, recognizing that this situation is critical. So they need partnerships to add efforts and have greater impact on affected sectors. That's a quick summary of what was discussed by our colleagues. And now I will give the floor, allowing 1 to 2 minutes for each to share their final thoughts and final message. I don't think we will have time, not sure we will have time for questions. So 2 minutes to each one of you for your final thoughts. Juan. Very quickly, in conclusion, I'd like to highlight the interesting aspect of sharing of experiences. We are banks of different sizes with different specialities and focuses, but we've had cross-cutting elements and also the importance of financing of infrastructure projects and the role of industrialization in promoting and sustaining growth processes to provide better quality of life to the population. Also mentioned here gender issues and the pandemic, and this forces us to analyze this because the impact is unequal, especially affecting women. who within our organizations generally suffer discrimination. And this is something that we are working very actively in order to address this problem.
Because we have to do things for society internally as well. Here we are women. Well, we are all men here, for example. There are no women. And there are also challenges. We have a project here in Buenos Aires to produce anti-COVID vaccines. And as a public bank and as the bank of the province, we got in touch with the company to finance and follow up. So they have financing in the capital sector so that they can also be part with the specific needs of productive sector. This takes place through dialogue, and it is a key. As a public bank, we need to activate the development engines in the country. So all this is part of our agenda constantly. So be safe in this moment, and thank you. Thank you, Juan. We agree with you. And let's continue with Jorge. You have some moments at the end, so you can have some time for your closing remarks. Well, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to participate in such an important panel. It was great to hear my colleagues here, the proposals, the purpose, the action as it creates complementarities and also synergy. I also would like to share with you that CAF has dedicated major efforts last year to support our countries and the private sector because of the pandemics. We approved $4 billion and we disbursed almost 11 billion. It was record. And as part of this effort, we have a line of $1.6 billion to support national and subnational development banks, especially regarding programs to recover from the pandemics. Of course, all of us are working in this area, all the banks present here, but our perception is that we require an even greater effort in the post-pandemic moment or period when what we see in terms of increase in distances with which we relate regarding the use of technologies and innovation. Not only in our region, we face very serious COVID-19 pandemics, but also a pandemic of productivity and competitiveness. And to that effect, it is essential to identify programs and projects that have implications that are profound in their economies. This is a purpose and a space that is very important for development banks, identifying areas where we need to develop markets, and also the participation of development banks in order to encourage sectors and projects that have impacts that are greater than expected to support this recovery. In this sense, I'd like to highlight something very important to us in the private sector area, which is strong support to SMEs. Not only because they are the majority of the companies in our region, but more than that, it is impossible to imagine sustained and sustainable growth to our region without being convinced that we need to generate jobs with some quality in cities where most of our populations reside. And small and medium-sized companies can help a lot in that. And the major purpose of economic development is not generating wealth, but harmony, peace, and political stability. This is only possible with the generation of jobs, of employment, of quality. So we need to support investment, safe trade environments, since employment is essential for economic development. This is a drive for us here in CAFE. So working with governments or private sector, with our allies, many of them are here today, other banks, and they are critical, essential, and most adequate for us to achieve our goal. Thanks again to all. It was I'm very pleased to participate in this panel. So I know you have a meeting and you only have 1 minute to say goodbye. Well, thank you very much for this meeting. We are supporting the whole region in Central America, but also something that I'd like to touch upon is even though we have support to infrastructure, but support to the human sector, it has been quite precarious. So we need to use financing to support education. This is not our end area, but we are not going to be able to grow as a region if we do not support the future. Thank you very much. I heard wonderful ideas. Thank you all very much. Have a good day. Now, João. Our coordinators tell us we have no more time. But I will be very brief. I just would like to say that the meaning for our countries to leave the the economic effects of the pandemics is extremely important, and we have been able to improve several of our figures in the region, poverty, etc., and this has a major impact. We will need important resources to recover and resume growth in different countries. And to that effect, the role of our banks is very important. But even if all resources are supplied alone, this is not going to do everything. So the message is that we work together and jointly. We have partnerships and with several institutions such as CAF and others, and we also work in several working areas with common financing at times, and we want to be innovative in the response to our countries and also working together. And therefore, incorporating the networks of development banks in our countries, which are also areas in which we can have greater impact in order to reach development that is whole in the region. So this is it. It was a pleasure being with all of you and sharing this panel. See you soon. Thank you.
I'd like to say that thank you. I'd like to say thank you and make a comment that we must leave no one behind. A development bank needs to pursue this. And I'd like to invite you to our assembly on the 25th of May. We are going to address digital inclusion and financial inclusion of women, and also let us recover our economies post-pandemic. Thank you for your time and sharing your experiences, and we will hope to see you in our assembly. Thank you.